Franchise spin-offs hand the lead a watered-down version of the original hero. Ballerina did the opposite. It made Eve Macarro fight like she had something to prove. And look, we get the skepticism. Female-led legacy spin-off has become one of those phrases that makes people brace for disappointment, because for every franchise expansion that earns its keep, there are 10 that just coast on the name and the title. So the bar here wasn't just make a good action movie. It was make a good action movie while everyone in the audience is already halfway to rolling their eyes. And somehow, it worked. To understand how it worked, you need to know who Eve actually is underneath all that improvised violence.
I'm Eve.
Quick context for anyone walking in cold. As a child, Eve watches her father Javier, a former member of a secretive assassin cult, die protecting her the night the cult finally tracks them down. Winston Scott, manager of the New York Continental, brings her to the Ruska Roma, the crime organization that raises her. She grows up training as both a ballerina and an assassin, taught that beauty, discipline, and violence are 3 sides of the same coin. By adulthood, she's a working assassin for the Ruska Roma, skilled, but still quietly haunted by the father she lost. So enough childhood trauma. Let's see what years of ballet and murder school actually look like in practice. That grief is exactly why she fights the way she does. John fights efficiently. Clean lines, minimal wasted motion. A man who's done this 10,000 times and knows exactly how it ends. Eve fights desperately, and the film actually explains why. Early in her training, her instructor Nogi tells her she'll always be physically weaker than her larger, more muscular male opponents, but instead of treating that as a limitation, Nogi pushes her to fight like a girl and rewrite the rules of combat entirely.
Fight like a girl.
That single piece of training becomes the blueprint for her entire fighting identity. Because she lacks the brute strength fighters like John possess, she leans harder into unconventional tactics, giving her a fighting style that's distinctly her own rather than a copy of the Baba Yagas. That philosophy plays out in real time once the movie gets moving. John famously killed 3 men with a pencil. Resourcefulness has always been part of his mythology. Eve matches that same creative instinct, but hers reads as scrappier, more in the moment. During a fight at Frank's weapons shop, she jams a rifle against a door to buy herself time while searching for something more effective. Later, she takes down a group of assassins using grenades, ducking behind metal doors and tables to shield herself from the blasts. And when traditional weapons aren't within reach, she improvises harder still, at one point knocking an opponent out with a stack of plates while scrambling for her gun. And near the film's end, using a fire hose to put out an assassin's flamethrower. None of it looks clean. All of it looks like survival. Of course, none of that works if the person selling it can't keep up. Thankfully, the filmmakers cast someone who absolutely could, which brings us to the woman actually throwing these punches. Ana de Armas didn't arrive at Ballerina out of nowhere. In No Time to Die, she had maybe 10 minutes of screen time as Paloma and walked away with one of the most talked about sequences in the film. Ghosted got mixed reviews, but nobody said the action was the problem. The Gray Man gave her a smaller role, but the same message. This is an actress building towards something bigger. Ballerina finally cashed that in. Here's where it gets interesting. The choreography wasn't built by taking Keanu Reeves' moves and reassigning them to a different body. It was designed around Anna's own physical strengths, with Chad Stahelski involved in additional action photography to make sure the fights met the franchise's standard without simply copying it. Closer in spirit to Atomic Blonde's brutal, exhausted improvisation than to John's polished efficiency, Eve's fights owe a real debt to the raw, POV-driven chaos of Korean action cinema like The Villainous, a lineage John Wick itself has borrowed from for years. Designing the fights around her was one thing. Actually pulling them off was another. The real challenge wasn't the choreography on paper. It was making exhaustion look convincing without making the audience doubt her competence. And de Armas didn't fake her way through that. She has said every day on set tested her limits as a performer, given the sheer endurance, discipline, commitment, and focus the role demanded. Her prep reportedly ran for several months rather than the usual few weeks, and included a strict low-calorie diet alongside daily routines of 90 minutes of strength training, 4 to 5 hours of stunt coordination, firearm practice at a shooting range, and treadmill runs in a weighted vest to close out the day. That's not the training schedule of someone playing tough. That's someone trying to physically become a woman still learning her own limits. And it shows in every frame. The film even puts that gap on screen deliberately, in the one fight that matters most. When the director sends John Wick himself to kill Eve, the two fight hand to hand and gun to gun. And John ultimately proves he's still the superior fighter, ending the confrontation with his gun aimed point blank at her head. But the film doesn't let that read as failure. John wasn't even trying to kill her, repeatedly telling her to walk away from her revenge mission instead, and the fight only dragged on because she refused to quit. She survives because he chooses to let her. It's the film's most honest moment. Eve isn't John's equal yet, and it doesn't pretend otherwise. It just insists that doesn't disqualify her from earning her own place in this world. That honesty is exactly what separates Ballerina from the spin-offs that don't work. Here's the fair pushback. Most legacy spin-offs fail, and audience exhaustion with franchise expansion is real. For every Furiosa that earns its own mythology, there are far more spin-offs that never justify their own existence. That skepticism wasn't unreasonable going in. Ballerina defies it specifically because it refuses the shortcut. It makes Eve's confidence something she visibly earns, fight by fight, rather than something the script simply asserts. And that earning never actually stops, even once the credits roll. Eve kills the Chancellor and avenges her father, but the film doesn't let her walk away clean. Defying both the cult and the Ruska Roma puts a bounty on her head, and she ends the film alive but pulled right back into the dangerous world she once tried to escape. It's a fitting close for a heroine who was never handed anything. Not John's skill, not his reputation, not even a win against him. Ballerina works because it never lets Eve borrow John Wick's legend. It makes her build her own, one improvised, unglamorous fight at a time. Nothing in this world gets handed down. It gets taken, and then it gets taken again the next day. Women in this genre rarely get the reputation that clears a room before they even throw a punch. They have to earn it every single time, in front of everyone watching. And the film makes sure we know that earning was never a one-time transaction. Even the Chancellor tells her as much on his way out. Cut off the head and the body still lives. So maybe that's the real question Ballerina leaves hanging over her. She's already earned her place, fight by fight. But how many more fights it'll take before this world finally stops moving the finish line? This is Ladies First, watching women in movies. If this kind of breakdown is your thing, like the video, subscribe to the channel and I'll see you in the next one.